First, I'm honored to introduce a very special guest to help kick off this discussion, General George Casey, who spent more than 40 years serving in the U.S. Army, including assignments in Europe, the Balkans, and the Middle East. From 2007 to April of 2011, General Casey led the Army as its Chief of Staff. He continues to serve the country and its veterans as an advocate for wounded soldiers, military families, and survivors of the fallen.
Thank you, Stephanie.
General Casey, why don't you start by giving us some context on the issue?
Throughout my whole career, the Army didn't pay much attention to transition. It was a check-the-block program. But over time, people came to realize that if we accelerate and improve the transition, it accelerates the way veterans can integrate into society. In 2014, the Department of Defense came out with a directive that completely revamped the transition programs, and it's made a significant impact. And the private sector got involved in a big way, both in nonprofit organizations that supported the transition of veterans, but also the big companies. I don't know a major U.S. company that doesn't have a veterans hiring initiative. Shortly after I left the active duty, I was reading a conference board report, and they had gone out and they had polled a bunch of CEOs, and they said, what qualities are you looking for in your workforce? And the CEOs came back and said, we want good work ethic, we want strong values, we want the ability to communicate, we want the ability to solve problems, and we want the ability to work as a member of a team. And as I read that, I said to myself, that sounds like the outfit I just left. So there you go, Stephanie, that's a starter.
That's some really terrific context, and it does sound like, with your long lens of history in the armed services, it does sound like there have been a lot of improvements in the rate of veteran employment. But I want to touch on this issue that you bring up, which is, when you're in the military, you're in a team. You're also in a hierarchical structure. How do you transition from being a service member where everybody wakes up at the same time, eats at the same time, into a corporate culture, and I don't want to presume that all of American corporate culture is the same, but where individuality matters, where individual problem solving matters? How do you transition? And is that an issue that's come up for veterans that do have a hard time fitting in?
The military is definitely a hierarchical organization, but you still have to deal with people. And what the interesting thing is, what people don't see is when the men and women are deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, they are the most innovative and creative people you can imagine. I mean, their lives are on the line. And so they're looking for anything that can make a difference. It is a change, and a lot of it is personality driven. I mean, some people like the structure and the rigidity of hierarchical structures, and they don't adapt. But the vast majority of the people are very creative, and they have adapted, and they will adapt.
It occurred to me that a lot of the veterans that are returning really came back as heroes. They saw combat, and they did things that might have earned them military honors, and then they have to come back potentially into a corporate culture that doesn't necessarily see that. They're just a cog in the machine. Is that hard for veterans to adjust to?
They're already a cog in the big military machine. They're a cog. But what I see is they don't want to be treated like heroes. They want to be, tell me what it is you want me to do, give me the training, and let me get on with it. The vast majority of folks, when you call them a hero, they cringe a little bit. I mean, I do. I'm not a hero. And most of the folks will tell you the same thing. They want to get on with it. They want to be part of the new team that they're on.